when WordPress 5.5 updated towards the end of August, the core no longer uses Jquery migration. Now, I don't want to get all technical about all this, but basically that is a way of running specific types of codes. And this is used things for like drop-down menus, having screens within screens, and so on and so forth. However, that WordPress no longer, they just took it out, no warning, boom, just gone. And that caused a lot of problem, as I mentioned in my mail. Over 200 themes have been affected by this and over a couple of thousand plugins. So developers are really not in the best mood with WordPress for not making us much more aware of that and in a decent time frame to be able to do something about it. Now, with that said, the WordPress team have made a short-term solution. They've created a plugin which helps with that, and I'll get back to that in a moment. What I wanted to remind you of is a little over a year ago, I mentioned the Dynamic Members newsletter that it would be about a year. In about a year, Dynamic would stop being further developed. And the reason for that is actually what's happening now. We knew this was coming a long time ago. It just wasn't supposed to be ready until the end of this year. But, you know, we're now a couple of months ahead of schedule, or WordPress are a couple of months ahead of when they said they would be releasing things like this. Not this one specifically, but that they would be changing the core code. And at that time, if you recall, I said that we would be working on a new platform because Dynamic is over a decade old now, and the code that that's built on is no longer the best code. What I mean by that is it's dated, you know, and to go in and redo all that was a ground-up job. We'd have to redo the whole thing, which one would take a very long time, and two, there's better ways of doing things. So rather than try and sort of patch up Dynamic and see if we could get it to last another year, we decided no, that's not the best way to go. The best way to go would just be to completely rebuild a whole new framework based on the new code. And the reason we decided to do that is it gives us access to much faster tools and much more streamlined code. And like I said, I'll get into that a little later in the webinar, explain what we've done with that. I just wanted to let you know that Dynamic now is, it's the end of an era. And what that means is there'll be no more further development. I'll still be supporting it, of course, for a while yet, at least till the end of the year, and even longer if people need more time to get things up to date for themselves. Then I'll be here as long as you need me for that side of things. What is important to know is that you do need to find another solution to the sites that you have, because the short-term solution, which is this plugin here, let me just, I'll put this in the window. This is a little plugin that the WordPress team made, and basically what that does is it sticks Jquery migrate back into the code. Okay, before, some members have been on and I advised them to roll back from WordPress 5.5, roll it back to 5.42, because that was all working then. But this is actually a better solution because it means you can still use the latest WordPress and have this installed. Okay, so let me just pop that URL into the chat box here. Okay, so you can go and download that plugin and just add it to your Dynamic site and you'll be good to go. You know, your menus will work again and so on. Now, I haven't tested it across every aspect of Dynamic, but the things that are most used, this will enable those things to function, the functions to work again. Okay. Now, please remember, this is the short-term solution. And when I say short-term, I mean, you know, you need to, whatever sites you have running on Dynamic or any of the other themes that have been affected by this, ideally you would want to get them updated as soon as possible. Now, that doesn't mean you need to have it all done by next week, you know, but certainly I would try and get some new theme, something put in place before the end of the year. So there's 3 months, or even into next year, you know, 3 or 4 months. If you can get your stuff up to date or changed over to a new theme within that time, that should be fine. So that's the short-term solution, is the plugin. Just add that to your Dynamic site and it will be good to go. Now, long-term solution is you really need to get a new theme, you know, because like I say, Dynamic's not going to be of much use to you moving forward. There's several reasons for that, and we'll come into them as well throughout the presentation tonight. But basically, back in 2018, March 26, I believe it was, Google started to roll out the mobile first indexing, okay? And I've heard people since then talk about, oh, well, you know, my site's mobile friendly, so that'll be fine. No, that's not fine. It's two different things, and I just want to explain that. Mobile friendly and mobile first are not the same. Mobile first includes mobile friendly, but mobile friendly does not necessarily and often does not include mobile first. And what I mean by that is mobile friendly means it's responsive web design. That means that you use the same site on, like Dynamic is, it's mobile friendly. So you can use the site will show well on desktop or mobile or whatever device you're using. It'll work fine. It shows nice. That's the mobile friendly aspect. Mobile first is actually a way of coding. It's a technology. And the way sites are structured, the way a framework is structured and the way individual sites are structured is completely different. And the reason for that is because with the Google Mobile First update, what they mean by that is your site is not ranked any longer on the desktop version of it, but the mobile version of it. What that means is most sites score reasonably well for the desktop version and not very well at all actually for mobile version. In fact, let me just do something here. If you just think of one of your sites at the moment, okay, just any site that you like, and what I'm going to do is I'll pop this in here, this link. Just go to this link and take a moment and do this now. Just go to this link and then put in a site, whatever your site is in there. Nobody can see it except you, but this will give you an idea of what your site is looking at. Okay, and I've got one here. You may recall this site. This was the Piety Hill design. You know, this was, if you remember way back in the beginning, when you first got involved with Dynamic, we did a test on the American Guinea Hog site, and this site was the test site for the A/B split testing. Okay, and this site has been built properly in a reasonable theme and so on. You can see here it gets 35 on mobile and 72 on desktop. Now, at first glance, you might think, well, that's not great scores. Well, no, it's not in today's standards. But at this time, and probably the way your site is built as well, you're going to be looking at similar figures to this, I think. Okay, unless you've done some really, if you've been doing manual performance optimization and so on your sites, then of course you'll be getting better than this. But we've tested a few dozen sites now, and these numbers, that's why I used this one, these numbers seem to be fairly average for existing sites today. And you can see here a lot of stuff. I'm not going to get into all this technical stuff here right now, but time to interactive, what that means is it takes 11.5 seconds before that site is fully loaded and interactive enough for a person to work with the site. For example, filling out a form or watching a video or whatever it is. Okay, that's how long it takes for the full page to load. Not the site, just the page. Okay, and that is very slow for mobile. Okay, better for desktop, very slow for mobile. And we're going to be looking much more at that tonight as well, and how we can take care of that. So mobile first ranking, like I said a moment ago, Google now ranks the mobile first, the mobile version. Oh, actually, it's not even mobile first then desktop second, it's just mobile first, the end. So if you do not have a mobile, let's say you have an old site and there's no mobile version of it or it's not responsive, you just have a desktop version, then actually according to Google, it's better to have that than to have, for example, a mobile version of the site. Previously, people would build separate sites for the mobile, which would be a sort of smaller, more compact version of the main site. You do not want to have any sites like that anymore. Google do not like that. They would rather you did not have a mobile version than have two sites on the same domain that show different content. It's very important to Google that the same content is shown on the site no matter what device you're looking at it, or your client or your potential prospect is looking at the site. So if you have a desktop version and a mobile version, they have to be the same content-wise, not layout-wise, of course. They're also Google. I mentioned this in the last webinar as well. We started to look a little at the core web vitals. And again, I don't want to get too technical with this sort of stuff, so I'm just going to briefly touch on what they are. And if we go here, for example, here, the Core Web Vitals, that's basically this. And what it is Core Web Vitals, basically this is your time to interactive, your first content full paint, and the largest content full paint. And again, don't want to get too technical, but basically what this does, it measures the user's experience of speed and performance, not the technical speed and performance, okay? It's shown how does a user experience their visit to a site. That's basically what Core Web Vitals is designed to do. It does so through quite a lot of complicated, you might have noticed that little thing here, for example, there's a lot of serious mathematics going on behind this, okay? And I'm just going to explain quickly what this means. If you're looking at a number like this, 35, now if we were up at 50, what's important to be aware here is these are not test scores, okay? These are guidelines. These numbers are guidelines. They're there to tell you things you should be aware of to make your site more optimized for a user. That's what it's for. It's not a score as in 100%. For example, if you score 50 here, that doesn't mean you're halfway there, because a score of 50 actually takes your site into the top 25th percentile. And what that means is your site is actually better than 75% of the other sites out there, or not out there, but that have been measured through Google. Okay, whereas if you go up to the high 90s or 100 even, what that means is you're now in the top 2%. Okay, so if you were to score 100 here, which is almost impossible in the interest of transparency, very, very difficult to do. However, if you managed it, then you would be in the top 2% of top websites, okay, the second percentile. If you get into the 90s, let's say, 90, 92, something like that, then you're way up there. You're in the top 8% of all sites. Very, very good. And people will say, well, does it really matter? Yes, it does matter, because that's what ranking is based on, okay? And no matter how pretty your site is or how fast your site is or anything like that, really, if you're not getting good Core Web Vital scores, then you will not rank on the first page of Google. Well, you might get on the first page if everything else is done well, but you're not going to get the top positions. Okay, you must get these numbers up into the high 80s, early 90s at least, if you want to be ranking in the top positions. There's several ways to go about that, right? You can go in and do all this techie stuff. It gives you full breakdown of everything that needs to be done. You can see it all there. It tells you everything that needs to be done, but of course, most people don't really want to do that, Some don't know how to do it, and some don't have the time to do it, or some people just don't want to do it. Okay, it's very time consuming and it's complicated. But it has to be done, because the changes now with Google and with WordPress simultaneously, not that they both are purposely trying to destroy our sites. That's not what it's about. It's just that both of them have changed the way they analyze things, and they've changed the weight of different elements of what makes a site rank and what does not. For example, Google PageSpeed Insights. Now, I promise this is the last technical bit, and then we'll get out of that, so just bear with me for a minute or two and we'll be out of this stuff. It's just important that you have at least a basic understanding of what it takes to rank nowadays. Okay, moving on. You can see here, this is the old version of PSI, and you can see the weighting here. This is how much weight they give to each element. For example, first content full paint here is 20%, but it's now only weighted at 15%. And some of the other ones that are higher up there, speed index was 26.7. It's now also only 15%. So, long story short, that actually makes it easier to rank now than it was just a few months ago. Okay, so just to get your basic stuff and be in the top 25%, you don't need to get them all correct. If you get some of them correct, for example, if you take this one, this one, this one, and this one, if you get those four ranking well, then you're up to your 50 points, okay? Or if you get this one and this one, just those two together, that gives you your 50 points as well. Okay, so it's flexible. You're not going to get full marks on all of these areas Later on, I'll be doing some specific training on what these are in depth and which are most important and how to optimize them individually and so on and so on. But it's very technical, and it's going to take time to explain that in simpler terms so that you really get a good grasp of it. But for now, what's important to know is that all of these things have an effect on your overall score and therefore a direct effect on your ranking in Google. And people can say, well, that's great, my site's scoring low, but I'm still ranking high. Yes, you may be for now. But remember, the Core Web Vitals is a rollout process, the same as they did with the mobile ranking. It started in March 2018. It's now completed here about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, something like that. So all sites are ranked mobile first now. There's no grace room anymore. Okay, and it's going to be the same with the Core Web Vitals. Right now, they're showing you what it's doing, but it's not actually having such a big effect right now. However, by the beginning of next year, it absolutely will. And that's another reason I'm holding this webinar now, is to give you give you a heads up. Because what's going to happen is sites that do not take care of this, and this is a lot of big sites, for example, your competition, if they're not taking care of their stuff, they'll sailing on thinking everything's going great, just buying tons of backlinks and just building more and more content. The problem is when next year comes, that's just going to drop away. It will just fall because they're not going to match what Google now say is required to get top rankings. Okay, that's basically what you need to know about that. So anyway, I won't bore you anymore with that. Let's get back to here. And of course, speed and performance. Speed and performance have always been, you've been using dynamic for some time now, and speed and performance is the thing that it's all about. It always has been, and it always will be. And this is just a new way of doing it. Okay, so we have the old framework and the new framework, and what I mean by that is before mobile first and after mobile first. Previously, you could get away with a lot more things technically on your websites than you can now. Okay, so this rickety framework here has to be much more solid, and it has to be on a much more solid foundation. Okay, that's the lesson for this part. So what does it actually take to rank number one? Okay, again, you'll see a couple of favorites here. Unique, relevant, quality content. That is a must. It's always been a must. It always will be a must. It's just getting tighter and tighter. Okay, because of all if you remember a couple of years ago, the Your Money or Your Life sites, the Medic update and all that. Again, a lot of sites got wiped out there for having, generic content and, written content. You can still use writers to do your content for you. It's not that, but it has to be unique. It has to be much more relevant than before, and it has to be of not just decent quality. It has to be very good quality now, if you're looking for top positioning. Okay, but like I said, that's always been part of it. And the last one here as well, your offsite SEO, that's always been part of it too, although not as necessary as everybody thinks. A lot of people build a site and think, okay, the way to get rankings is just to get a ton of backlinks and press releases and all that stuff. No, that's not correct. Yes, it's correct that everybody does that, but it's not the correct way to do it. The correct way to do it, to get long-term, high, consistent ranking, is to make sure your foundation, i.e. your framework, your site is built solid. Because here's what happens. Having a solid foundation strengthens everything else, okay? And it creates a much better results across the board. So not just your ranking, but the weight of backlinks. Backlinks, I don't know if you know this, but backlinks are weighted. Not every backlink is created equal. And backlinks, the weight or the authority given to a backlink, again, is due to its uniqueness and what page it ranks from to which page on your site, and so on and so on. So, putting 100,000 backlinks to a site, the only thing that's going to happen if you try that these days is that you're going to get your site penalized immediately. Google are way, way smarter than that now. And I'm sure you already know this, but I just want to underline it because it's very, very important. I've seen people go out and build a website, brand new website, new domain, and they have it up a month and they have like 500 backlinks to it. That just doesn't happen. naturally. There's no organic development in that at all. And Google can see, okay, you've got 500 backlinks to your site within a month. That's interesting. But we can also see you've actually only had 28 visitors. So how did 28 visitors create 500 natural backlinks? It's not possible, okay? And this is the way you have to be thinking now. You have to be aware of these things. You can certainly still use a lot of the SEO tactics that we always use, but you must use them smarter, you know? You have to simulate natural organic growth. That means adding a few links at a time, slowly over time. As your site expands, more visitors come in, then you can increase the amount of backlinks you do, but they must always be a fraction of the visitors you have in. So if you had 100 visitors a month to your site, then you could maybe put up 3 or 4 links that month. Okay, next month it goes up to 200. Okay, now you can maybe put in 8 or 10 links and so on. That's the sort of speed we're talking about here. Do not buy link packages and throw them at your sites, especially new sites, okay? Because it'll kill the site before it even has a chance to take. The new stuff here that's going to help you with the ranking is a mobile first structure. Like I said before, you need a new framework that's built in mobile first technology. You need to have good user experience as shown by the core web vitals, and of course it has to be optimized for speed and performance. And I'm not talking about, another classic answer I hear often is, oh well, I just need a faster server then. No, that's not the way to go either, because a faster server will certainly give you an increase in speed, but that's not where you want to fix the speed. You want to fix it through optimization of the framework or of the site. You'll get much better results for that. And later on, I'll show you some speeds that I've got on shared serving. Okay, like it's the cheapest serving you can get. So just to show you that server speed is not the be all end all. Another one is CDNs. Oh, I'll just put on a CDN, and no, you don't want to go that way either. These are things you do at the end if you need a little extra edge, but these things are not what are going to help you rank. Okay, they never have been, and they're most definitely not going to help that way now. You can't just put a plaster on it and hope that it's going to work. There has to be a real solid base in your site if you want it ranking. So just to clear them up then, what you need to be ranking moving forward is optimization, high performance, and mobile first framework. That's what you need. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is hold a little, not a pause, but take a couple of minutes here. If anybody has any questions about where we've came to so far, you can just pop them in the question box or in the chat box there, and we can take some of them now if you like. Otherwise we can leave them till the end, but I'll just wait a moment and see if anybody has anything they would like to ask. Okay, nothing much really there that we can't wait until the end, so we'll just move on then. Well, like I said, since last year we've been developing a new piece of software, Dynamic Plus, if you like. Like I mentioned previously, it wasn't a viable option to repair, or not repair, but to get Dynamic up to date. It would require a whole rewrite, and we figured, okay, if we're going to have to rewrite everything anyway, then let's go and study what we actually need. What are the Google specifications? What are the mobile first technology specifications? And what do we need to have in place for better performance, also from a core web vital perspective, so that we get good ranking. And what we came up with is new software which we call WPOptimal,